Congressman LaTourette, thanks again for joining us this week.
Sure.
I wanted to revisit an issue that we talked about a couple weeks ago, and that's immigration reform. Initially, you had seemed less than optimistic about the prospects of passing comprehensive immigration reform. And then after the Gang of Eight bill passed out of the Senate Judiciary Committee by a fairly wide bipartisan margin, you seem to be a little more optimistic. So I wanted to revisit the issue after a couple of things have taken place and kind of take your temperature on it. First, how big of a deal is it that Congressman Raul Labrador, who is a conservative member of the House, dropped out of the gang negotiating in the House? How much is that going to impact or damage the prospects in the House of passage?
Well, I think a couple things happened since we've chatted about it last. 82 senators voted for cloture, which is a pretty big number, on moving forward in the Senate. So that's good news for immigration reform. Raul Labrador was seen by many as the key in as a conservative Republican in moving forward the deal in the House. The fact that he's left and has now endorsed Chairman Goodlatte's "let's do this in bite-sized pieces," I think is a setback, but it's not a horrible setback. Speaker Boehner over the weekend said immigration reform is probably the most important thing that could get done this year. And we just had lunch with Kathy McMorris Rogers, who's the chairman of the Republican Conference, and she indicated that even though Labrador has left, others like Mario Diaz-Balart and others have stepped into the fray. So not a good day or a week for immigration reform, but not on life support yet.
Well, the Senate has been debating the floor on debating the bill on the floor of the Senate this week. And one of the things that's cropped up is that Cornyn and some of the other opponents of comprehensive reform have been offering attempting to offer amendments that would require more emphasis on border security, and essentially some amendments aimed at border security first and none of the path to legalization until that takes place. How much of a threat do you think those amendments are to the overall politics of this? It obviously puts Democrats who are in red states, who are up in 2014, in a very difficult spot.
Well, and that's obviously Senator Cornyn's intention. The play in the Senate appears to be a fight this time, not among Republicans, but between Democrats, and particularly Senator Chuck Schumer and then the leaders of the Senate on the Democratic side, Senator Durbin and Senator Reid. Senator Schumer thinks that just like 82 votes on cloture was important, he's trying to get to 70 votes on the overall package. In order to get to 70 votes, you need some Republicans. Durbin and Reid are saying, wait a minute, you got to give up too much stuff, like too much emphasis on this border security to get that many Republicans, so let's try and pass it with 60. So again, the path isn't completely clear, but it's still moving forward.
You mentioned Schumer and others wanting to push to get to 70 votes. And part of the conventional wisdom has been that if we're really going to see this gain momentum in the House, that we needed to get the highest number of votes possible in the Senate.
Right.
Some folks, though, have scoffed from the very beginning at that number 70, saying that that's just a number that's going to be incredibly difficult for them to achieve. What do you think the odds are that you could actually put together a compromise in the Senate on the floor that ends up garnering 70 votes?
I think it's not bad. I mean, I do think it's not bad. And you have to go back to the 82. I mean, they can still lose 12 members who voted to begin the debate, which is kind of procedural, but it still sends a signal that they want to at least engage in the conversation. And you can get to 70.
Well, and at the end of the day, no matter what the Senate does, all roads still have to pass through the House. Sure. And you mentioned that Speaker Boehner had said that this was an issue that the House was going to take up. He also said, however, that the House wasn't going to do anything on this issue that violated the principles and values of the Republican conference.
Right.
So at the end of the day, what does that mean for immigration reform in the House? Are we going to see the Chairman Goodlatte approach of these piece-by-piece smaller issues, or do you think we still have an opportunity to move a comprehensive bill in the House?
I think there's a chance for a comprehensive bill. The key is going to be Speaker Boehner is going to reach that moment in time when he has to decide to abandon the Hastert rule, and that is, can he cobble together 218 votes made up of Democrats and Republicans, but not a majority of the Republicans? That's always risky when you're the leader of the party to do that, but he did it on fiscal cliff, he did it on a couple other things at the end of last year. he's shown the courage to do it, and he'll do it if he feels that it's the right thing to do.
Do you think that Speaker Boehner looks at this as a kind of a legacy issue? I mean, you've mentioned the Hastert rule, and his willingness
Yes.
to put that aside when he thinks it's in the best interest of the country. Do you think he looks at this as kind of a legacy issue for him?
Well, I don't know about it's a legacy issue for the President of the United States. I think he sees it as something that the Republican Party has to engage in, because there just aren't enough 50-year-old angry white men in the country anymore to elect the President of the United States. And if the Hispanic community is not engaged in a constructive way, it's not going to have good electoral consequences.
Well, pulling out your crystal ball again, and give us a sense now. Do you think that we will have comprehensive immigration reform passed into law before the 2014 midterms?
I do. I don't think that the Republican Party can go to the ballot in 2014 being seen as obstructing comprehensive immigration reform. Now, that doesn't mean surrender on every principle and put people at the front of the line and everything else, but what it does mean is that they need to work constructively and find a way to say yes.
Well, thank you again. I have a feeling we'll be talking about this issue again before the summer's over.
I'm sure we will.